So, hello. I'm really happy to be having a chat today with a friend of mine who I've known for 23 years.
God, isn't that long?
I know in 1997, Sarah's then partner, boyfriend, and then became fiance and now husband, Martin. Martin and I worked together back in 1997 in the same office. And we lived in adjacent villages in Berkshire. So I got to know Sarah really well, and Martin, of course, really well over the last 23 years. And Sarah has been up to some pretty amazing things in recent months, based upon something that she's been living through and living with for the last 8 to 10 months. And I wanted just to share a couple of things about Sarah, not so much about the journey, but also what's been impactful for her in the difference between how she might have seen about life back in the spring and early summer of last year, of 2019, and now, and also the amazing work, the idea that Sarah then has that is now in full swing. So I'm really excited to share that, Sarah. So welcome.
Thank you very much. And just to add something to that, Win, it reminded me that you were the first person that I told that I was actually marrying my then boyfriend husband. We were the first, and you were also one of the first people that found out that we were expecting our first child as well.
Shall I say that I knew before you, which is a really
yes
thing?
You did know before me. You I'm probably allowed to share, because I'm allowed to share most things. We struggled with many fertility issues. I experienced a tragic miscarriage before having my dear darling daughter Emily, who's now nearly 18, and it was devastating for both me and Martin. And then subsequently, obviously, tried to get pregnant again. But we were actually on holiday with Win, and I was obviously throwing up. I mean, could have been the cocktails that we were consuming consistently, but yeah, when you did actually know, you have spooky fertility sixth sense, and then when Martin confirmed it, you were like,
Yeah, well, I know hangovers, right? I had a lot of them at that time. I haven't had one in pretty much 18, 19 years myself. But I thought, this isn't a hangover. And I said, you're pregnant, Sarah. This is morning sickness. Yeah. And it's nice to be right on some things. That was one of them.
You were absolutely spot on right. You were absolutely. And I think it's interesting that I kind of start there, because a lot of the, I suppose, challenging thoughts that I had started to happen for me when I became a mother. We had a lifestyle, a very intense lifestyle, being a mid to late 20-something couple. We were living a very full-on, excitable social life. And then to go from that to being a mother with very little extended family support on my side, and also Martin's side, because we lived a few hundred miles away, was quite challenging. And it was, again, that thought process that started the whole my negative thinking was, I'm not good enough. I'm good enough to be a mother. I'm not good enough to bring this life into the world. I'm not good enough. And trying to compensate by almost pretending at the time, and then looking at this child and thinking, oh my God, I've just produced you. What is going on here? And then being guilty that you don't feel anything initially for this child, and beating yourself up about it. So I can see now, looking back, some of the levels of thought anxiety and some of the levels of the low mood may have been manifested in certainly that experience. And then probably in the early 2000s, Emily was born in 2002, there's not necessarily any support or education for the thing called postnatal depression. And because of our home existence, with Martin working away a lot, us being separated during the week a lot, it was one of those, I suppose, British things: stiff upper lip, you just got to get on with it. And I had this one person, this one tiny being that was reliant on me and me alone. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even look after myself, never mind a little person. So yeah, it was very, very interesting for me to look back and reflect on that. And I never got any help or support because I was in denial, I suppose. I didn't want to reach out because reaching out at that point was weak, very weak. And those thoughts, I thought they were all factual. I thought I was a rubbish mother. I thought I was less of a person. I thought I was a rubbish wife. I thought I was dreadfully inept because I couldn't hold down a career and a marriage and a parenting responsibility, all of those things. And yeah, it was a difficult time. And looking back now, I'm sorry we started there. I didn't really mean to start there, but that's where I can see some of the self-reflective anxiety being quite important.
So did you tell anyone?
No, not at all. I think having Martin away from home a lot, we moved, as you know, when we moved back up to Doncaster, which is where I'm originally from, because I panicked. I absolutely panicked. I had a really great job. I worked for Lego in Slough. I absolutely love my job, but I absolutely panicked because I thought, in my head again, thoughts being completely factual at this point, I thought that I couldn't work and have a child because it was just not possible, because I couldn't be good enough at both things. And I had to be perfect. And there's this level of perfection, I think, that I obsessed with massively. And so I made Martin move, and I did make him. We had many conversations about we could move to a bigger house because we lived in a kind of a 2-up, 2-down relic of a building in Windsor. We could move to a bigger house. We could get childcare. We could get support, whether that be au pair, nanny, whatever that may be. We had friends around who could maybe help out, but I absolutely panicked, and I through almost beating him down, not literally, may I add, but emotionally, I moved us back to Doncaster because I thought my only way of succeeding in this parenting world was to be around some form of extended family. And then when we got there, I realised what a massive mistake that was, because I'd missed the most important part of the whole equation, whereas I loved my husband, and not having the love of my life there every day to support me was devastating. And he was the same. We were living separate lives for a number of years, and it was difficult to talk to him about it. And he eventually grabbed hold of the situation after Emily went into school, because schools were different at that point. She was 3, she was in school. She told her teachers that, because we were building a family tree, although they were building a family tree at school. And Emily drew a picture of herself, her cousin Abigail, who I ended up babysitting, me, and her dad wasn't there. And they just asked her, well, what about your dad? And she said, my dad's gone and I don't know when he's coming back. And they called me into school and just said, is there something, Mrs. Sylvester, is there something you'd like to tell us? We obviously don't know the situation. And even then, I had no emotion with that. I was not bothered by that at the time. But I told Martin, and if you ever met my dear darling husband, which I know you do, Martin, you do, Win, he is the most loving, caring, kind person. And he would do anything for his family. And he immediately grabbed hold of that and said, we're moving. I cannot be apart from you anymore. What matters most in this world is the 3 of us, the 3 musketeers. And that for me was a big turning point, that level of support. And I think from then on in, he was always my best friend, he really was, but he became my confidant. He became the person that no matter what I said, he wouldn't run for the hills. I do think he's an arse at times, but he's the person I love most in the world. And he's been through the ringer with it all, bless him, he really has. But,
So fast forward to, if that's okay, to 2019.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about that. What was happening with you then?
Oh my God, when I was an angry individual. I was a horrible individual. I was a horrible person. I probably towards I would probably say early 2019, on paper, I probably had it all. I had a very successful job. I'd been promoted through the ranks very quickly. I was getting pay rise after pay rise after anything that I wanted, I got. I had a new car. We'd had work done to the house. We were going out all the time. We were socializing. Emily was in a good place. We were living life. But inside, I was angry. And inside, I was crying every day. Every day, I would wake up internally crying. But then I'd put on this mask. And the mask became stronger, so much so that the inside me started to die, and die very painfully. So I'd wake up in the morning and unfortunately medicate myself through alcohol. Alcohol was a big driver for me in early 2019. So wake up in the morning feeling like absolute rubbish. Either that's because I had a hangover or because I just couldn't face the day. And I was completely obsessed, again, going back to what I said before, with that idea of perfection. How do I show the outside world that I am perfect? Sod me, sod the internal, sod what matters the most, the lovely thing that you see here, sod all of that. But how do I make this outside perception perfect? And it was exhausting to do everything that you thought other people wanted you to do, and answer emails quick enough, hit targets quick enough, support your. I mean, I was managing probably 13 people at this point, and some of them were quite young, so some of them were quite vulnerable, and they'd be like, "Can we have a one-to-one?" And we'd be talking for hours, and all I was doing was inside, I was crying, going, "Help me, please help me." And it was awful. It was exhausting. And again, I didn't particularly speak to anybody because I hated myself massively, hated what I'd become, and spent probably the early part of 2019 avoiding mirrors at all costs. Wouldn't look in the mirror at all because I hated the person that was looking out, because the inside me, the real me, I was killing the real me. And I do believe that I was destroying her because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know, or I didn't know who I was. Then I couldn't accept that I was just me. I wanted to be more than me in some way. I wanted to be more than the person that was just a simple human being that's just getting by, that's completely awesome and amazing and cries like everybody else and goes to the toilet like everybody else and hates baked beans but loves pineapple and all of those things. I couldn't believe that was enough. I couldn't believe it. So I started to completely destroy. And perfection doesn't exist. Not in a million years does it exist, but the thoughts that I had in my head were spiraling. It was just exhausting. So yeah, early 2019 was really, really difficult, and I was an angry, horrible person, and I've got no idea why my family stuck by me at all, and I love them for it because I hated me, and I'm sure they hated me at the time as well.
What do you see about that now? The fact that it looked to you like they put up with you when you hated yourself. And I know they wouldn't see it like that, but
yeah,
there's a subtext of what I'm hearing. That's how it might have looked like to you. It was puzzling to you that they would stand by you, given how you felt about you. What do you see about that now?
they absolutely loved me, but there was a certain level of fear for them that they didn't know what to say. It had gone too far, I suppose, that they would almost allow me the irrational erraticness, because that was where I was at that moment. And to a certain extent, they didn't know what to say.
So they could see something up with you at this point,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
What
Both
kind of
Martin and
things?
Emily. Both Martin and Emily knew that I mean, they both described it as work stress and workplace fatigue, or I was run down, I was overworked, and they could see that. But they were because I was very aggressive, they've said now they were very scared about how to put it, because there was many instances where we used to go out for family dinners and family events, and I'd be like, all the time, I'd be on the phone, I'd be work emails, I'd be notifications, it would consume me. And Martin didn't know what to say. If he said, oh, Sarah, come on, it's the weekend, for God's sake, put your phone away, I'd be like straight on him. What do you mean? Get off my back. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what kind of pressure I'm under.
Right.
And then he'd just leave it, because it's like, well, it's just not worth it. And there was a certain, I think they wanted to help me, but couldn't find the words to be able to get through, because I'd built up that barrier, that almost veneer. And yes, somebody called it a veneer, actually. And I think veneer is a great word, because it's that kind of hard shell that almost protected me from me, because I didn't want to see that actually underneath all of that, I was enough. But not at the time I wasn't. But underneath all of that, I was actually enough.
Yeah. And it's funny that sometimes we can't see that. We can't see that. And sometimes other people can, and they never lose sight of what's underneath the veneer. But for us, it sometimes looks different.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with Martin about my work, and given the fact that we've always been a partnership in terms of working salaries, all of that kind of thing. And I was absolutely gobsmacked that he would think that I would be okay quitting work. First of all, I thought if I didn't work, I would be less of a person. And then secondly, if I didn't work and Martin had to support me, that would make me, again, less of a person. And I couldn't see that if I focused on my own happiness rather than my perceived work happiness and my perceived level of success, that would somehow be okay. Because what I didn't see was that Martin was actually focusing on my well-being and happiness, but I was focusing on my perceived level of perfection. And he'd say to me regularly, oh, for God's sake, Sarah, if this job is not right for you and it's doing your head in like it, you keep saying it is, just bloody quit. What do you mean I can't quit? What would I do if I quit? And I'm exaggerating slightly, but I always talk like this. I always talk really fast. And I talked like that all of the time, because that was how my mind was working all of the time. I'd be constantly frantic because I couldn't work it out. Because the thoughts were going round, round and round. I couldn't understand them. So if I couldn't understand them, I had to understand them. And then I had to think about them some more. And then I had to try and analyse them some more. And then if I couldn't analyse them some more, then I'd failed. And then I'd failed. And then I was a failure. Then I was like, oh my God, you're rubbish. And it just... And then I suppose then I started to resent Martin, because he's this kind of laid back guy that's kind of like, all I want to do, Sarah, is love you and be happy. Like, what? What's that about? Love me and be happy? First of all, you can't love me because I'm just not worth it. And what's happiness anyway?
Yeah. Isn't that an amazing thing to think?
It's just, oh yeah, it's just horrendous. So
Yeah.
yeah, a really long-winded way of saying, I think the early part of 2019 was quite challenging, and I became more and more angry, more and more scared, more and more isolated from, don't get me wrong, this is the thing that is really interesting, because people, or certainly me, I can be isolated and lonely in a room full of people. I can be, well, at the time I certainly was. I had many people reporting into me. I used to host meeting after meeting. We gave big presentations. I was always surrounded by people. I was never on my own, ever, at work. There was always somebody that wanted a piece of me. I used to get 70, 100 emails a day. My phone was constantly ringing. I was always in a meeting, or being dragged to a meeting, or coming back from a meeting. I was never on my own, but I was the loneliest that I've ever been in my life in that environment. And I was so isolated because it was so massively, it was just an awful situation.
Yeah. Can I pick on a couple of things that you just said?
Yeah.
You know, it's so universally true for every human being behind everything that you've said, everything. So I feel bad about me. I then think about that. And then the more I think about that, the more I see it, there might be some relevance in it. And then I'll think more, and I'll think more, and I think more. And it almost feels like, you know, the snowball going down the hill. It gathers more stuff to it, and it sticks, including complete irrational things such as husband, job, performance, me as a human being, all of that stuff, totally irrational. But the way we see things, especially when we think it's all true, it just all starts to stick and come together, and then it snowballs. The other thing that I find, and the last thing that you said, is that maybe it's just me about I can be lonely in a busy room. No, I think that's true for everyone. But here's what we fail to see, because it doesn't look like this, and I can really relate, well, to the snowball thing and to this part as well, is that it looks to us as if the outside, the environment, the job, the number of people around us has a causation, is the cause of how we feel on the inside. But it can't be true. Because if that were true, then we couldn't be lonely around other people, and yet we all can relate to that. And we can all relate to a time when we can feel connected when there's no one around. So even if we just get a sense of that, we notice that the external world and how we feel on the inside are two separate ecosystems. They're not. One does not cause the other. Yeah. Two separate worlds. And I think that's a lovely thing to notice. Because what we then sometimes under the illusion of is that, oh, if it looks like the outside is the cause of my internal strife, and my internal low mood, and my anger, and my anxiety, and my stress, then we look to fix the outside in the hope that that will change how I feel on the inside. But it doesn't work, because if that's not the cause, then that can't be the solution. But lots of us do that, right? All the time with little things, and sometimes with big things in life. We make big decisions based upon fixing the outside when that had nothing to do with how we feel.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely thing to remember, for me as well, to remember that has, it looks like the outside is the cause of my inside feelings, but it never is. Never. And often it looks that way.
It's really interesting that you say that, and I completely agree, because I spent a lot of time externally projecting and trying so hard and tirelessly to fix my external, the way in which I came across to people, the way in which I projected, the way in which I behaved, the way in which I talked, the way in which I acted, the way in which I dressed, the way in which I drove, the way in which I ate. Everything externally projecting was manufactured, because I thought if I cracked all of that, that would help. tiny little thing inside of me that I was destroying, the little me, I thought that wouldn't fix it and make it better. Because if I externally fixed it, I wasn't focusing on internal. I spent so much time focusing on the external, didn't focus on the internal at all.
Yeah.
And that is completely, now, jump forward to this current day, completely flipped to my head. I couldn't give a stuff. I really couldn't.
Tell me about what's different in the way that you see your life and life in general now.
Life just is. For me, there is no try. There is just be. Be me in this current moment, whatever that may be, that is enough. Simple.
Yeah. And see, because that does sound really simple.
It is simple because all of a sudden my mind is calmer. Now, don't get me wrong. I can talk like this all the time and I can get really erratic and I can get really anxious and I can get really like, but to notice that and go, okay, that's interesting. You're off on one again. I'll allow that. I'll give it a space. I won't let it get its foot under the table, and I certainly won't give it a cup of tea. I won't say it, but I'll allow it space, and eventually it'll get fed up and it'll just go. Because the more you feed it, the more it kind of goes.
So here's my question. How do you account for the change in you allowing yourself to be, given how life looked to you 9 months ago?
God, that's a really interesting thing. There's a number of factors that kind of cause that to happen. First of all, that I suppose I just woke up one day and thought, I'm exhausted with all of this constant spiraling thoughts. Can I do something different? Because this is just exhausting me. I think we had a conversation probably towards the back end of the summer. We spoke for 4 to 5 hours, and you, again, I've probably told you this at the beginning when we weren't recording, I thought you were batshit crazy. I really did. Because I thought I was broken, battered, bruised, ill, beyond redemption. And you just looked at me and went, you're not. I was like, no, fix me, help me. I'm me. And I didn't see it until very late on. I then read a great book that you lent me, actually, Nicola Bird, Little Peace of Mind. Oh my God, there was like this epiphany that I think I had after reading that, because there was some little things. And the thing that sticks with me the most, even now, there's less to do than we think there is. And that was like, whoa, what? Okay, so right now I think I've got a pile of washing over there that needs doing. I need to empty the dishwasher. I also need to reply to these 74 emails, and then and my phone's ringing, and then I need to get a drink, and then I need to eat. Whoa, hang on a minute. Just breathe. Life is simple. Simple folk. Just breathe. There's less to do than we think there is. And by doing that, you're not going to stop those thoughts and those feelings from happening, but by bringing it back to its simplest term, I'll still get up in the morning, still need a wee first thing, I'll still need to brush my teeth because I've got morning breath, I'll still get hungry at some point during the day, I still love to meditate and run and all of those things haven't changed. I haven't changed. I'm not more ill or more better or more fixed or more broken than I was yesterday. I just am. I'm just me. I always have been. And I always will be. And I came up with this phrase, and I think it was kind of similar to when we talked. And I still go back to it now, as well as the whole, there's less to do than you think there is. Awesome is a default for me. I am defaultly awesome. I don't have to be awesome. I just have to be me, and I'm defaultly awesome. And it's like this happiness thing. I am defaultly happy. Is defaultly a word? I don't know, anyway, it is now. Happiness and awesomeness is a default. You don't have to become something. You don't have to strive. You don't have to go to a course and teach you to be happy, because you are innately happy. You just might not see it. You are innately awesome. You just might not see it. And your level of awesome compared to other people's level of awesome doesn't matter. You're awesome. And I never thought that. I never thought I was awesome. But I'm bloody awesome.
Now, I'd like to just say a few things about what you just said and just reflect on some moving parts in what you've shared in the last kind of 30 minutes or so. Because how it looked to you that you needed the veneer or the mask in order to appear perfect stroke awesome. And now you realize you're that way by default. Well, no wonder there's less to do. No wonder all of a sudden life became simple, because when we see that innately, naturally, we are that way, then all of a sudden, all the stuff that we try to do in order to be who we always were makes absolutely no sense at all. And it's funny how we don't see it that way for so much. And the other thing that I remember, looking at you in the summer on that very rainy Friday afternoon, and noticing that you had a story about you that I just didn't buy. And I knew it was very compelling to you. But I also knew that the only thing that was up was that you thought that what you thought was true.
Yeah.
And I didn't buy it. Because I just refuse, because I just, not that I refuse to see it or refuse to buy it, but I just know that that's just not true. Or another way of saying it would be the awesomeness that you know is true about you was never gone. Emily always saw it. Martin always sees it. And I just refuse to see anything different other than that for people. And when you got a glimpse of that, you got a glimpse of something in that afternoon. And then what occurred over the next kind of 6 months to me has been phenomenal, watching from a distance about what you're up to, and the informal chats that we've had. But waking up to who you are, you always wanted to be who you always were. It's all of a sudden, well, crikey, that's an incredible thing. And the only thing that's in our way is that we think that what we think is actually true. But it isn't, not necessarily at all, especially when we're in a low feeling, when we're in a low state of mind, and we don't see anything straight.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating.
It's true. It's true. I'll pick up on two things that you said just there. When we had our chat, and I was obviously giving you all the spiel about how broken and bruised and all of this, violins out and all that kind of stuff, you just looked at me and you went, oh, well, I literally wanted to punch you in the face, because it was like, believe me, believe me, I'm all these things because I want them to be true. And I'm like, oh, well. And I tried to shock you and tell you about, I mean, I had a panic attack so severe that I picked off the back of my hand and I made my hand bleed, because I was convinced, I thought it was true that there was flame shooting out the back of my hand. And I convinced myself that that was true. So I spent the next 20 minutes picking the skin off my hand. And you looked at me and you went, oh, well, it makes complete sense to me that if there's fire shooting out the back of your hand, that you want to put the fire out. I was like, is it and the whole story about my clothes talking to me, I was convinced that my clothes were talking to me. You said to me, similar to what Martin said to me, what were they saying? And I'm like, believe me, pity me, feel sorry for me, because that's how I feel right now. But it was just, I believed them to be true. And when I experienced the horrible, painful breakdown that I had at work, I remember the big phrase that I said out loud in front of anybody who's listening. I don't know what to do. Now, look, now, I do know what to do, because I've always known what to do, and I always will know what to do. And I would question anybody saying, I don't know what to do, because you have an innate ability. You know what to do in any given situation, because you just do, because you're just you. You're awesome. Trust in yourself, because you will know what to do. I didn't know. I was like, I can remember saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. Well, I did know what to do, because the panic attack didn't kill me. I didn't die. I didn't jump out the window. I didn't end my life, which is what I wanted to do at the time, or I thought I wanted to do at the time. I got home. I hugged my husband. I went to the doctor, all of those things. I did know what to do. And I got up the next day. Yes, I lost the ability to speak for a few days because I just didn't know what to say. But eventually I did know what to say. And it's trusting. You will always know what to do. Always, because you always have.
I think that's a lovely thing to remember. But what we often do is that we think we need to know now the answer to something that isn't happening until a week Tuesday. When a week Tuesday will take care of a week Tuesday.
Mm.
And to really shine a light on this, I don't know if what I'm going to say next is absolutely true, but it's how it looks to me in listening to you. When you spiraled and you gave up, that looked like wise to me. I've tried all of this stuff. It ain't working for me. I give up. Space for something else.
Yep.
That's kind of really cool to notice that, wait a minute, that was your wake-up call. When you were able then to talk to other people and able to talk to Martin, talk to Emily, talk to people at work who have been amazing from what you've told me. We're a lot wiser than we think, and it's not cognitive in IQ wise. It's something that comes through when we're not even thinking.
Yeah.
Intellectually, that we realize. So it wasn't, let me do a test to prove to me that I'm awesome. It was a realization of natural awesomeness coming to the surface, a realization that I'm spiraling, it ain't working, I give up.
Yeah.
It's a really, in my mind, a really cool thing to notice, that innateness that we can, the innateness of being awesome includes that too.
Yeah.
It's really lovely.
It's really interesting that the minute that I just stopped was the minute that I started, if that makes sense. Because by stopping, stop thinking, stop doing, stop doubting, stop seeking, stop searching, all of that, just be simple.
Yeah. And
realize that there are other people, because I'm not special, I'm a human being. I'm not wired any differently. I'm not like $6 billion man with some kind of like genetics inside of me that's going to make me superhuman. I'm just a human being, and there's other people out there that are exactly like it.
Yeah.
And if you call it, I suppose I call it tribe, because having the tribe, like-minded people around you that get you and understand that they also are innately awesome. They may not see it, but they can accept it. That we can, as a tribe, support each other. And I think that's where the drop-in came from, because I couldn't believe I was the only person to feel that way at all, because I'm not special. And I don't mean that derogatory at all, but I'm not, somehow not, I can't be the only one. And that's where it was like, okay, there must be other people out there. Let me go and seek those people. Let me go and find out whether I can be around people, because that will then almost give me that permission to be me in my complete and utter awesomeness, and share my most deepest, darkest thoughts, and know that no thought is factual. You may think it is, but it's not. And that's where I suppose that's where the drop-in came from, that I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counsellor, but I do want to be well around people who feel the same way as me. I suppose innately well, but I do want to be, I suppose, of service, if you like.
So just as a disclosure, we're recording this in early March, and it's Thursday. And on Monday, Sarah did the official launch of a drop-in centre that runs 2 days a week on a Monday and Friday in Wokingham in Berkshire. And while it's been running for a while in the same location, and you've had lots of people coming in, and I'll ask you a bit more about that in a second, I just found it just wonderfully inspiring to watch you talk about the mission and the vision for the drop-in centre, the permission to just be, where people can, as you've just said, just say what they want to say or not if they don't want to, where there's zero judgment, and all there is a presence and a place to have a cup of coffee, cup of tea and a biscuit on a Monday 10 till 2 and Friday 2 till 4. And by the way, I'll put this on the link below where you'll see the details of the location and the timings for this as well. But I also wanted to ask you about what have you noticed about the impact when people come and drop in to the centre? It's About Time Centre. What do you notice about the impact with them?
It's the simplicity of it that's very impactful. The fact that life is complicated for everybody. People that come from many different backgrounds. Some come because they are being signed off sick from work. Some come because they're lonely. Some come because they are battling a mental health challenge. Some come because they're supporting people who are battling those challenges. And some come because they're just a little bit curious, or they might want to just come and get out of the cold. But the thing that I've noticed the most about it, it's the power of connection is mind-blowing. And when I thought about this centre drop-in, I had grand scheme plans about what it was going to be. It was going to be workshops and classes and talks and reading and music, and that was a letterbox. It really was, because the simplicity of the whole thing is walk in the door, which for some can be a bit walk in the door. You will be greeted with a smile and a cup of tea. That is it. What you do next is entirely up to you. And it can change every time you walk in that door. Just get through the door. And I guarantee you that I will greet you with a smile. If I've seen you before, then I'm a bit of a hugger. So I will hug you if I've seen you before. And I will offer you a cup of tea. Now, I do have soy milk and I do have decaf coffee as well. So, and then it's up to you. Say what you want to say, share what you want to share, be how you want to be, or don't. It's up to you. There is zero pressure. We've had people coming in and just sitting there and not saying a word. That's okay. Because there's less to do than you think there is. You don't have to pretend.
And what do you notice about what they're like when they leave?
Oh, there's a certain level of elation, definitely. I've had many, many emails from people just saying, thank you for allowing me the space to just be myself, because it's great to just talk. And it's not all doom and gloom, that's the thing. I mean, when I suppose there's a perception, mental health community drop-in means we all sit around in a circle and we all say, hello, my name is Sarah, I'm suffering with anxiety and depression. And you're going to go into this kind of AA meeting kind of circle. And to be honest with you, it started to become that way because when we first got into the centre that gave us the space, we were in a very small room because I didn't know how popular this was going to be. And we were in a very small room and all of a sudden people turned up. I was gobsmacked. And then more people turned up. But what it became is we became a bit of a circle because people were coming in. It was a small room. So everybody came around in a circle. And then it got to the stage where we were taking it in turns. It's like, hello, my name's Amy. I've come from Reading. I've got on the train, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, hello, Amy. My name's blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't want it to be this way. It's not a support group. I want to make that very, very clear because I'm not a counsellor or a therapist. I'm not trained. I'm not there to fix. It's not a support group. It's a drop in. And you just drop in, you have your cup of tea, you sit down and you just hang out. So I approached the centre and just said, we're getting 8, 10, 12 people every session. I need a bigger space. And that's when they said to me on the Monday, well, why don't you just use the cafe area? And it's been such a game changer because the cafe area is just such a relaxed environment whereby you can hang out at the hatch if you want to have a chat when I'm boiling the kettle, or you can go and sit and wander around the cafe area if you just want a time out. You can, if you find it a bit overwhelming, you can pretend to go to the toilet because you want just a bit of quiet space, or there's a little garden out the back where you can wander around. And it's just a breath of fresh air. And there's a lot of people that have emailed me afterwards just to say thank you for just allowing me permission to just be me. And I found it very overwhelming, I'm not going to lie, because I do have to decompress. I use the right word, decompress after the session. And because I suppose I'm taking on a lot. I'm taking on other people's thoughts, feelings, actions. And it's good to be able to just say at the end of a session, you're awesome. Go away and be awesome. If you want to come back on Monday and be even more awesome, then crack on. And people keep coming back. That's the shocking thing. And they tell other people and they come back. And we talk about football and music and festivals, and some of the guys arrange to meet separately, and some guys offer to help out other people with things that they're struggling with, like moving furniture or picking up parcels or whatever. And it's just a power of community and conversation. Simple, safe sanctuary, that's what I've called it, because it's simple, it's safe, and it's just a sanctuary. And that's just, I'm a little bit shocked at how successful it actually is becoming, or has, how quickly it's taken off.
And I just think that speaks to the power of what it's like to be in a place where there's no one judging and you can feel safe and it's a sanctuary. And for everyone to drop out of what can look like a complex life to the simplicity of what it's like to just be, which is what you've noticed about you and your own life. And I'm not in the slightest bit surprised that people keep coming back and how it's growing. And it shows to me how much that's needed today, that the access to services in mental well-being isn't easy these days, and there's less available. And here in the United Kingdom, the National Health Service is more and more stretched. And with all the best will in the world, it can't do everything for everyone. So the fact that that you've been able to get funding and have been able to help with support from the local community and the local council and the community centre there, to be able to do what you're doing, I think is just a wonderful thing. And it would be great if anyone listening to this would like to set that up for themselves in their own local community, to get in touch with you, because I know that you've seen the pitfalls of what we can do when we make things complex, and how to make it more simple, and some of the ways through getting things done and being able to set this up. So is it okay if people contact you with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I've got some grand scheme plans about expansion. I'm taking it day by day. I'd very much like to be able to say that at some point in the future, I'd like to see, and it's about time, mental health community drop-in centre across all parts of the borough and beyond. I mean, in the very early days, I had a lady contact me from Torquay, of all places, and she actually said to me, I want to set one of these up in Torquay. And that was at the very early stages of me doing what I'm doing. And I said to her, I'm friends with her on Facebook now, and we occasionally chat, that let me get the bare bones of what this is all about. Let me get the simplicity sorted out, or allow it to manifest itself. And then we can do something like that, because I'd like there to be many more of them, because it ain't complicated. I made it complicated in the very early stages, but it isn't complicated. It's find a space, buy some tea bags, make sure you've got soya milk, because some people are picky like that, and just show up. Open the door and show up. And that's it.
Not just about a drop-in centre, not just about it's about time, what you've started here in Berkshire, but also that's life right there.
Yep.
Just show up.
Just show up. Just absolutely show up. That is, and for a long time, I never believed that just showing up was enough. I had to be something else. I had to drive a flasher car, or I had to wear flasher clothes, or I had to own flasher gadgets, or I had to get a pay rise, or do better, or hit the target, or whatever it was. But it's enough to just show up, because by showing up, you're always an awesome human being anyway, but just show up. And that's all I do. I just every day just show up. And showing up makes me smile.
You can tell. And I just love the fact of how much you realize that and continue to see that more and more. And I've said it before to you on a message, and also I'm pretty sure I said it to you on Monday as well at your launch. I find you completely inspiring in what you do.
Oh, thank you.
And I really mean that.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. Yeah. Likewise. You were very supportive of me in the early days of and you were the only person I think that stood up to me, apart from obviously Martin and a little bit of Emily. And I'll say it again, I literally wanted to punch you in the face, because you were the only person to stand up to me and go, you're not broken, you're not ill, you're none of those things. You are innately awesome. You always have been. And almost in a nice way, get over yourself. Just realise that. And I think that was, I didn't see it at the time, don't get me wrong. I mean, went through a lot of angst and heartache and feeling that those thoughts were thoughts and feelings, and thinking that they're true and all of those things. But when it eventually happened, I'm like, God, he knows his stuff. He's a smart bloody bean, isn't he? That'll know it all.
Well, there's no different though about what I see in you and not what you see in you now. So there's nothing smart going on there. It's just seeing what's always there.
Yes.
Nothing else other than that. And I'm glad you didn't punch me in the face. But even that would have probably made sense if I was being, as you called somebody else, so you're being an arse. But here's what I really loved about that conversation and what I remember about it. While I was completely unshakable in my view on you being absolutely fine, you just didn't think you were. And you just thought that what you thought was permanent. You thought that what you thought was true. You thought that what you thought was personal, as opposed to the fact that it's totally transient and temporary. Totally illusory as opposed to real, and completely universal for 7.8 billion people on this crazy planet Earth going around. It just doesn't look like that. And when you see that, which is what you're seeing more and more of, it can't be shaken. That realization is just waking up to being awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's really cool. And as a closing point, really, it's really simple when we see who we really are.
Oh, absolutely. Life is simple. And I talk to many people through my running, through my drop-in, and just kind of personally. And I can see that look of almost skepticism when I say the words, you do know you're awesome, don't you? And they look at me going, but I've got anxiety and I've got depression and I feel really rubbish and I didn't want to get out of bed this morning. And I look at them and go, you do know that that's okay, don't you? Well, why is it okay? Well, just because it is. And I do see that look of skepticism, but then you see that kind of like, oh, okay. And then come back to me next week and just, if you're still here, then we'll have another conversation and then just say it again. Do you know you're awesome, don't you? You do know you're okay, don't you? And yeah, I feel a little bit smug, actually.
You don't sound it. You just sound very genuine to me. And it would be lovely for everyone to know more about that for themselves, but also to know that they don't need to, you know, it's not us going around fixing people.
No.
And it just helping people wake up to the fact that there's nothing in them that needs fixing whatsoever, and then they can literally just show up. And
yeah. No, I'm not fixing. I'm not a therapist.
Yeah. That's cool. All righty, Sarah. Thank you very much. I'll put the details on the thing below. Lots of love to you, and always a pleasure to speak. Take care.
Thank you.